Misty. So you saw the intro video, and now this will be the infertility story that Pat and I have been, what our infertility story has been so far over the last few years. I'm hoping to not be so sad. I watched the previous video, and I just can't say that I won't be for the first few, going through all of these memories and all the experiences and everything. It's probably going to be a rough emotional ride for the first few videos, but there are points where I feel very happy and excited and all of those feelings too. And I do feel a lot of positive things. So I want to share all those things. But I feel like I need to kind of get through all of this so you know where and what and how all of this stuff came about. So I'm going to begin. I know infertility stories can be like part 1, part 2, part 3. I'm going to try to keep it in one because my hope is to do many more videos and I can always bounce back and kind of explain some of the infertility maybe more in detail. But I think if I just kind of cover a general timeline of how everything went down, that will be a good start. And here we go. So Pat and I got married. I was 38 years old, and it was April 26, 2014. It's the happiest day of my life. It was so just romantic, and our honeymoon was beautiful, and we were off to a great start. We were just so excited. That summer, I started the ovulation kits. We started trying to have a baby. I had always thought I would be the most fertile girl in the world. I have been pretty healthy my entire life, so I felt like I was at a really good place. I'm at a good place. This is going to happen. And then a few months go by and nothing really happened, and all the way until December. And we're like, we need to go to a fertility specialist. So I had never been tested for anything, regarding fertility, and neither had Pat at that time. So we went to our first fertility clinic, and we did the blood work and the ultrasound and all of that, and it was the hardest thing ever. I remember being in the car that day, and I said, no matter what, I just don't want her to tell me that I have to do IVF. And because I'm so insanely afraid of needles and blood, and I pass out at doctor's offices, and I am like the biggest baby. I've always been like that. In fact, one of my first memories of my life, when my mom and I have talked about this, I was 10 months old, and I remember holding her hand, and she was like, we're going to see Dr. Gerst, and you're going to get a shot today. And I was like, what? And she's like, how do you remember that? You were so young. And I'm like, that's where it all started, So I'm like, please, I don't want to have to do IVF, please. So we get there. I don't remember how soon before I found out the results. I'm pretty sure it was a day or two. But in the, over the time of being at that clinic, a few conversations later, she was like, you have a really high FSH and a really low AMH, and you have, I did have quite a few follicles, which now looking back, I don't know that was accurate. I'll give you the numbers. I don't know if you guys are even into, this part of anything yet, if it's going to even make sense to some of you, but my FSH at the time was 23, my AMH was 0.06, and my follicle count was 14, which I really think that was a mistake because now it's 3, and it's been 3 for the last year. So I think that they must have just been seeing something else. I don't know if your body could change that quickly, but she did tell me I had polyps and that I would have to get them removed. She said I'd have to have a water ultrasound or a saline sapinogram or all those things. I don't even know all those terms, and maybe those are the same thing. But I was like, you know what, I have to be under for all of this. She wanted to take a biopsy of my uterine wall, and see if there's anything wrong. And I was like, oh my gosh, this just, you have to knock me out for this. So they did. And she said, okay, you do have polyps for sure. We do have to remove them. Your biopsy came back fine. Okay. We signed up with the OBGYN and this is a fast version, right? Like I said, we'll go back and go in detail if you guys want me to at any point. But so we went to the OBGYN. We had a surgery, my first one, to remove the polyp. Well, based on another test, ultrasound, water ultrasound, something, they found more of it left in there. So she had missed fragments based on even what she wrote in her notes, that she had only taken fragments out. So it was really, really alarming. We had to go back and do another surgery to remove the rest of the polyp. So that was the first, now at this point I've been like under like 3 or 4 times in the matter of just a few months. Well, then the doctor said, this is our first fertility doctor I'm referring to at this point. There's like 4 in the, as where we stand right now. But so she said, you know, you for sure, I remember the day she goes, you have less than 10% chance of conceiving with your own eggs with IVF. So I remember, you know, after that we had to go to the OBGYN, and I remember telling her, because she's been in my life for a while, and Pat was in the room, and I said, well, it's been a nice time being married for the last few months, but now I have to get a divorce. And I mean, I was pretty serious. Like, I just didn't know how I was going to stay married to somebody who wants children so bad. And like the whole reason I chose him, like not the whole reason, but like one of the major reasons, is I thought he'd be the best husband when we have a family, the best dad to our children, the qualities of like everything I was looking for, encompassing all of that, you know? I was like, well, that dream is over, and now I just have to let him go find someone else. And it was a really tough time. I was very depressed, and I don't think I've ever really come up for complete air since then, to be honest with you. So it's been a really hard 2 years since that devastating news, and I have been through a roller coaster of crazy emotions ever since, and problems and other surgeries and other complications. So I'm about to share the rest of that with you right now. So then she decided I needed to be on birth control pills, which really upset me. And I know that's part of the whole protocol, but I was just like, birth control pills? I'm trying to have a baby. Like, I don't want to like not take one chance of a month, you know, and let it pass by. But, you know, we started reading every book out there. We started taking all these fertility supplements. I started acupuncture. We planned for our first IVF based on whatever she thought the protocol should be for me and my situation. And here we are rooting for that 1 out of 10% or under 10% chance. Like, yay. So I was very upset. I was like hysterically upset. And so we ended up getting this humongous box of shots and needles, and oh my God. Yeah, that was traumatic. I would have to ice it with an ice cube until I felt like my stomach was frozen, so I wouldn't feel anything. Then I'd hide my face in a pillow, and I would just like my eyes like this, and I'd be like, get it over, get it over, get it over, get it over. And then you'd have to do multiple ones. And for like, I think it was 17 shots in 8 days or something like that. And then I had to do suppositories for like 1,000,000 days. All this stuff that I'm just not very comfortable with, like, at all. I did all this. I grew 1 egg and 2 tiny eggs. And this is the same place that told me I had 14 follicles. So my guess is they were seeing fragments of the polyp or blah, 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 something else. So I'm like, well, I clearly don't have 14 follicles, and if I do, they all just pass out. Now I'll have 3 left. So they canceled it and said you should do the trigger shot and try to have timed intercourse tomorrow, and best of luck. So that's what we did, and that didn't work. They did give us a chance to do IUI, but I just talked to a doctor recently, and he says I give you less than 1% chance with IUI. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it's even less, which I'm like, how is it less? You're putting the sperm right there, right next to the egg. And I'm like, I don't get it. But anyway, it's the quality of my egg, is, you know, obviously based on my FSH, that's bad. And if it's abnormal quality, it's not gonna work. The sperm doesn't want it. So, you know, I'm understanding a little bit more as time goes on about all of that. Obviously, when the IVF got canceled and we had a negative pregnancy test, I mean, that was just such a devastating time for me. I remember going to the grocery store and just like buying everything in chocolate that I could find. I came home, dropped it all on the table, and took a picture. I was like, sent it to one of my friends and put it in the Facebook group that I was part of at the time. And I'm like, well, canceled IVF. This is what my life looks like, you know? This is what I'm looking forward to right now. And it's just, ugh. Anyway, I'm just giving you the timeline. I'll tell you all the emotions later. But anyway, so then I do after IVF and that failed and all that, one of the nurses told me she thought I was going into premature menopause? No. What's it called? Perimenopause. So that I potentially am going through menopause of some sort. Okay. So, and my periods were always normal, you know, I mean, I had them like every 21 days, and that was annoying. So that was just really stressful. But I had intense pain in my legs and my low back leading up to my period. So I've always had like brutal ones. I mean, even in high school periods ever, I used to skip school, and I used to just be like, just sit in a recliner chair in the living room and be like, ow, like everything hurt. And I started in recent years going and getting massages like 3 days a week during my period, like right the week before my period, because everything is that sore. So I knew my periods were bad, but I didn't know that was like, there's a level where you cross over where it's like, this is too bad. Like, you need to get help. Like, no one tells you that. Like, you're like, I have PMS. Everyone's like, oh, I get it. You know, you tell your mom, like, I don't feel good, mom, I have cramps. No problem. Stay home today. So it's like, no one ever says like, well, how bad are they? Or, you know, so anyway, that leads me to what happened next is we decided to go to another doctor. This time, the first doctor was extremely cold, by the way. I cried almost every time I was in there. I cried even with the nurses. I cried when I talked to the nurses on the phone. They were so cold to me. The entire staff, she was very scientific. She was very, like, no emotion. For such a tender topic, I just don't know how they're not a little warmer. Luckily, the next place we went to, everyone was always so nice. The staff, this male doctor was a lot more friendly, but he was very like a poor listener. So it had a warmth to him, but all you saw was like the top of his head, because as soon as you started talking, he started writing down notes and talking out loud to himself. So I felt like the entire time, Christy recently had polyps removed, Christy recently, like, and then he'd give you a copy of his notes, and I mean, I was like, and then he'd be like, as soon as he was done, he'd be like, okay. And then he just like, he's leaving, and we're like, we have like 20,000 more questions. So the first doctor, we got to ask as many questions as we wanted, but she just didn't have 1 ounce of the heart. I didn't feel, like I couldn't sense it. This guy had a heart, but he didn't have any time for it. I was just like, next. Anyway, the first conversation, I mean, he did give a few little sentences of plans and what he suggested, but within meeting him, before the normal routine of him writing notes, in the very first meeting, he, which was only, I think, like 5 minutes, at the most, he asked me a few questions, and he goes, you know what? I think you have endometriosis. And I was like, what? I was just at this other clinic for like 8 months, and we did polyp removals and IVF, and we did birth control pills, and we did, you know, all these biopsies and all this other, like, no talk about it. He said, well, endo you can't find unless you go in laparoscopically. But based on you and your periods and your pain and your this and your that, he's like, I'm pretty sure you have endo. And then you see all over his office, he's like on the board of endometriosis, and he's the board of this and the board of this, and that's his specialty for years. And I was like, well, I mean, I'm probably talking to the right person if he's gonna know if I have endo or not. I'm sure this is the guy to know. In like no time at all, we scheduled a surgery. I mean, I hadn't even been with this clinic for very long at all, and it's like, okay, we're doing this massive surgery, which was one of the hardest things looking back, and I'm not even sure if that was, I won't know until later down the road, right, if it was all good, but right now it feels like that was a terrible decision. But anyway, we end up doing surgery. I woke up 5 hours later, and I had 6 incisions in my stomach. They told me I had stage 3 endometriosis. They said I had a tipped uterus, which I've always known, and that he went ahead and he reattached my tipped uterus to my uterine wall, which is my abdomen wall, somewhere in there, all connected. So I'm going to be in the worst, most intense pain of my life for weeks. It's one of the hardest surgeries to recover from because you use your core for everything. Not to mention, he removed all these fibroids, which took forever because fibroids have a really tough texture to them and they adhere to the walls and all this stuff. He removed polyps. He removed a weird mass that he wanted to get biopsied. He wasn't sure what it was. He did a procedure where he clipped a nerve bundle, which was elective. He said that that would help my period pain going forward. He removed a ton of endometrial scar tissue. And yeah, the next few months of my life, like probably 8 months, 10, were torture. So I suffered severely on recovering from that surgery. There's a million things he did, and I was in the worst pain ever. I mean, I called daily, like, I need more pills. I have to go back in. Something. It's like, I'm dying. Like, it was just like so much pain. Well, I thought I was still recovering from pain from the surgery. And I had burning, horrible burning sensations for at least 20 minutes, 3 times a day, every day. I couldn't go anywhere, couldn't stand very long. I'd be at like places with Pat because we were buying a house. We at Home Depot, I'd be in the little wheelie cart thingy. I would be sitting on buckets or anything in aisles because it would just strike me at the weirdest times. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to sit down. And he would just be like, okay, sit right here, you know, and I would just like sit wherever, and I would just like ache, you know, and I'd take Advil and stuff like that. I stopped taking, you know, pain pills because it was like, it was so intense, it didn't even matter. It's like no pill was going to help me with that. And I thought it was just recovery. So when I go back to him in January, I'm like, I'm suffering so badly. I'm suffering. And I'm like, I don't know what, you know, is this still recovery time? Like, how long does this take? And he's like, oh my gosh, no, you shouldn't be feeling any of that. He's like, I think we're going to have to go and do another surgery to see what's wrong. He's like, maybe it's scar tissue, or maybe something, you know, it went wrong. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you serious? You know? And then since that surgery, which was in August of 2015, I had not had a period. I had one right after the surgery, and then I didn't have one for months. So that was like another indication that maybe I had scar tissue too. So I said, whatever you do, please do not do anything to my left side. I don't want you to go in any of the incisions towards the left. I only want you to go to the right because that's where I have the worst pain, and please fix it. And oh my gosh, it's so bad. He's like, okay, you know. I wake up from that surgery, and I just started crying when I asked. I said, so did he only go on the right side? And she's like, oh no, honey, he went all over. And I was like, no! Because then I was like, now he's probably gonna have a robot hurt something on the left, and now I'm gonna, you know. And I was so mad, and I go, well, did he find anything wrong? She's like, you have no scar tissue. He found more endometriosis, and he removed more endo, and he put a stent in you, so as to prevent any more scar tissue from forming. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I think maybe he removed a little scar tissue in my uterus, that's what it was, but he had not found any in the area underneath the wounds of, you know, kind of where we were thinking the pain was coming from. Anyway, I was hysterical and lost my mind over that. I was so depressed, and I was like, great. So I still suffered. I mean, the pain was still there. So then they said you need to go see a vein specialist and a nerve specialist. So I went to a vein specialist, and they had to, you know, put all this dye through my veins, and I had to be kind of awake and kind of not awake, and he had to like go in with like some kind of tubey thing, and just like all this stuff. You know how I feel about needles, and it's just like, it was just every other day I felt like just somebody's jabbing me or telling me something went wrong. So here I am, like, great, now what? You know, now I have this vein problem, and it turns out that no, I don't have anything wrong with my veins. So the next thing is they're like, okay, you need to see a nerve specialist. So I did see a nerve specialist, and he had said he thought it was something with my iliolinguinal nerve, which is kind of like a branchy nerve starting at kind of around your hip, and it can kind of go to your back and down your leg and into, like, I always felt like it was near my ovaries is where the pain was, my right ovary. Felt like ovulation pain, but like times a zillion, and for 20 minutes at a time, 3 times a day. Yeah. Anyway, that's what it was. He was right. We did one nerve block. I was 80% healed. Nerve block is like this big needle. They buzz you, they zap you, they say, is this where it hurts? You say yes. He tries to numb the nerve. You need to have 3 of them in a short amount, like within 6 months or something, for insurance reasons. But like the 3rd one is the real one, but they have to give you 2. Anyway, so I did 2. I never made it to the 3rd one because I saw such immense, like pretty much like 100% after the 2nd one. It was the best thing ever, and I'm so thankful that that's what it was, and I can live again. I was suffering for so long with that, and they did say I'll have to do these nerve blocks for the rest of my life, like every 6 months. Some people don't need to do it that often, and you know, the last one I did was June last year. It's now January 2017. So June 2016 was my last nerve block. I do feel it sometimes, like sneaking back, like creeping back a little. Causes me some concern with getting pregnant, because what if the baby and the nerve, they don't like each other? I can't be putting this big needle in there, you know? And he says he will do it if I was pregnant, but only up to a certain number of months because the baby's too big then, it's too risky. So I'm very scared of that. You know, that's one of my major fears going into this, is how will I be able to carry this baby with this potential recurrence of this nerve problem that I have. And so that was the nerve thing. And then I still suffering from I'm still not having any periods. And I had, back when I woke up from that second surgery in April, where, you know, I wake up and like, you did the left side? Oh my gosh. That was a terrible surgery. He had a stent in there. Removing the stent was literally like the worst feeling I could ever, oh my gosh, it was horrendous. I had to go home with a catheter for 5 days. That was so hard. That was the day I decided to be a donor on my driver's license. I always had this weird feeling and phobia that if I was a donor on my driver's license that I would die quicker. I know that's so selfish. So when I was doing the catheter, somehow I just like felt so sorry and so sad for anybody who has to live with that or struggle with problems from surgeries. And I just felt so empathetic that I was like, Jesus, I'm doing the donor thing, you know? And I did. And it's crazy, you know, like we started going to church too, you know. I've always been religious, but we started going to church together as a couple last August, and we've continued every Sunday. You know, occasional Sundays we can't, but it's been so good for us, and this has been quite the journey, It's just been, it just never stops. Like this is a feeling that just follows you everywhere, you know? I mean, how many times a day do we watch something about babies, or something about your friend becoming pregnant, or something about, oh, I just got pregnant again, or something about, you want to come to this baby shower, you want to come to this first birthday party, you want to come here, you want to do this, you want to do that, and you're like, ah! You know, or you move into a house, and we thought IVF would work, and we have 5 bedrooms, and it's a constant reminder that we shouldn't live here, and I feel like a loser. I feel like a terrible woman, and I know it's not my fault. But this journey does stuff to you. It messes with you hard. It shakes you to your core. So the rest of the journey so far is that we went to a funeral in Vegas. It was really sad. It was Pat's uncle, and we went there. This kind of happened suddenly last summer. We go to Vegas. I'm experiencing some symptoms, like totally weird symptoms, where I have pounding headaches every morning I wake up. I am so hot. So my camera the card went out, but I put a new card in. So everything with the whole fertility world just got kind of put on hold because we were like in a whole nother world. Now we're going to surgeons, endocrinologists, talking to health practitioners, Googling out of our minds. Like, I was just like, what is wrong with me? You know, obviously got diagnosed with that. I started watching a million YouTube videos and reaching out to people on Instagram, and I was just like, help, like, what is this? On top of everything else I'm going through. So it was very hard, and they told me that I needed to have another surgery and I needed to remove my thyroid fully. I was like, I can't do all this. I cannot do one more surgery. Like, I am done. I don't even want to do one needle. Like, this is so past my point of comfort. And they're like, you have to do this. I mean, your other choices are this, and they're not good for you. And I have someone in my family who chose one of those other choices, ended up having a terrible time. And still is suffering to this day from that route that she went. So they're like, because she had all those issues, you shouldn't do that. You have to do this. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So then we had to schedule this total thyroidectomy. And that was in September this past year. Oh my goodness gracious. And while this was kind of going on, like slightly before this, we had a phone consultation with CCRM. They are the supposedly best fertility clinic for, I think, older women getting pregnant with IVF and stuff like that in the United States, and they are in Colorado. So we had a phone consultation with one of the doctors there that was recommended to us, and he goes, in the end, he goes, if you were my sister, I would tell you to pursue other options. And he also said, I don't know why that doctor, the second doctor, why he had you do endometriosis surgery, because the odds of using your own eggs or getting pregnant naturally are so low. I think he gave us less than 5% chance. He goes, I just don't see the benefit for you to remove all of that. It just doesn't really make any sense. And then I was just so devastated. Like, I did all that for nothing, And that's what I'm saying. I won't know if it's for nothing. I mean, the weird mass, that they biopsied was negative, and what if that had grown into something later down the road? I don't know. The uterine lift, will that help me if I do have a baby? I don't know. Will the fibroids had to come out if I did an egg donor pregnancy? Maybe, possibly, depending on where they were. I don't know. All of it just like, I don't know. If I think too much of it, I want to just go crazy. So I can't think too much of it. But anyway, so after all this, we did the thyroid. We took it out. The surgery was like the best decision of my life. That's like the one really good thing. I have felt amazing since the moment I woke up. I felt like a new person. I still feel that way. My energy is through the roof. I feel absolutely so great that I wonder, how long I've been suffering with that whole thing. I've had a few doctors tell me your period's going to come back. You are going to be fertile once your thyroid gets to a certain level. And we think you probably might be able to get pregnant in a few months on your own. And I'm like, what? And I was like, was all along it's sending signals to my FSH when, because my body was in such a high state of hyper, everything is just off. And they thought that had a big reason. And, that could be what it was. And it kind of started to make sense, because I was like, well, thyroids and their hormones, and FSH is a hormone, and Anyway, I had another doctor recently say, nah, they're not related. They're not going to do anything to each other. Welcome to my world. It's like none of it makes any sense. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know how we got here. I don't like being here, but here I am. So then we decided that we were going to seek out yet another doctor, and we just wanted to kind of hear one more time what he recommended. So we found another doctor. We left their clinic. We got our paperwork. We're like, bye surgery, happy doctor. That's what I feel like he was. The first doctor was bye no emotion doctor. And now the third doctor, I referenced 4 doctors. The one was CCRM on the phone, so we won't really be talking about him ever again. But we'll just put him number 4, right? So this is really the third doctor, even though it's really 4th in a timeline. So this is the third doctor that we've seen in person. And we just saw him a few weeks ago for the first time. He's like, okay, so we're gonna do blood work and ultrasound. I'm like, yay! Which I kind of knew it was gonna happen, but I'm like, I know he's gonna. I did one blood work and ultrasound after the thyroid surgery, and it came back. They called me and said, guess what? You have more fibroids in the wrong spot. We're gonna have to go in with a water ultrasound, and we might have to do another laparoscopic surgery. And I was like, no, we're not. So that was part of the reason we left that clinic. Like, I can't do one more surgery with you fools. Like, I'm done. I don't even know that I should have done any of them with you. So bye to them. Hello to this new person. I kind of knew what was going to go on. I was like, okay, what's going to happen? They're going to tell me you need blood work and ultrasound. They're going to get the results. Then they're going to be like, okay, you need to do a water ultrasound to see if there are fibroids in the wrong spot. Then they're going to say, same thing, you have to have a laparoscopic surgery or a surgery vaginally to remove them, or they're not in the wrong spot, everything's cool, and then we can decide if we're going to do egg donor or not. Okay, so that's what I had intended that things would happen. Here's where they are right now. We did ultrasound, and I have not had a period since I had one after my thyroid surgery. So I had one in October. October 30th was my last one. So at this point, now it's January. They're like, "Are you sure you're not pregnant?" And if one more person asks me that, I'm sure I'm not pregnant. I'm sure. So have you seen my FSH numbers? So, which I can't believe that like your fertility is literally down to like 2 hormones. Like that's pretty much like what really it's about. it's like an ID tag. Like, what's your FSH? What's your this? It just walks around and like hovers over your head, and you're like, oh my gosh, well, that person's never gonna have kids. Well, that person's never gonna be genetically related to anyone. Well, that person, that's how it feels. It just feels like this like target or this like thing that follows you around, and just like a number, and it's just like, really? So anyway, he checks all of the stuff, tells me my FSH is like, it's really high again too. It's 18, 23, 25, somewhere in there. Says my AMH is like super, super low. It's kind of like it was before. I mean, nothing's really changed. I have 3 follicles still. She was in there with this ultrasound, in the longest ultrasound I've ever had in my entire life. I was like, is this ever going to end? And it's the only time I think I've ever watched the screen, because she talked me through everything, which normally they don't say a word and they scare you to death because you're like, what do they see? What do they see? What do they see? And don't say anything, and they make you so uncomfortable, or they talk about the weather and you're just like, cool, cool. But this one was like, well, here's this, and here's this part of your blah, and here's where this is. And I'm like, oh, and she goes, and here you have one fibroid this size, and here you have one this size. And I was like, okay, you know, and she goes, and you have this, see this? I'm not sure what this is, but I think this is a cyst. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like what? Like, I've never had a cyst. That's the last thing that I thought, you know? Like, I've never had like a cyst that was alarming or anything where they would cause concern. They're like, yeah, we think this is like a cyst, and, you know, we have to see what's gonna happen, and maybe it'll go away with your period. And I'm like, well, I don't have any periods anymore. Well, I mean, I had 2 last year, and everything's a mess. By the way, all my periods were fine, right? You guys know this, until I started that one surgery in August 2015. Ugh! Anyway, so then guess what? She pulls the ultrasound thing out, and this is totally TMI, like totally pause it if you don't want to hear this part, like blood everywhere. Yeah. So I was like, well, my period just started, or you broke my cyst, or something happened. I don't know. So she's like, wow, yeah. And it was like full, like, yeah. So that was really weird. So we had to obviously wait for the blood work and ultrasound to come back. Well, the blood work comes back that my estrogen levels are through the roof. That doesn't make any sense if it's my period, because your estrogen is high when you're ovulating. It's not high when you have your period. I think I have that right. So I was like, well, this is really, and why would I be ovulating if I have a cyst and I'm bleeding, which looks like my period? So, like, nobody really understood. She's like, well, the only way we're going to know is to wait a week and retest. I'm like, oh! So here we go again. More blood work, more ultrasound a week later. Waiting for the results. Love that. 2, 3 in the afternoon, just like waiting for the phone to ring for like another terrible phone call. So they call me and they say, yeah, you have, you did ovulate last week. When we saw that big round thing, that was a follicle. And we don't know why you're bleeding. So you mean I could have gone home and had sex? I don't care if there's blood. I could have had sex. Like, I had a big follicle right there. Ah! Anyway, I'm sure it still wouldn't have worked, right? But in my head, I'm just like, what? So they're like, well, now you have to go home again. You know, this is like on the phone. I'm already at home. Whatever. Just kind of in my head, I'm still there when I'm telling you the story. So it's like, okay, you have to wait another week, and your period should come next week because you ovulated last week. So your period should come, and you should give us a call with day 1. And then when you do day 1, then we are going to schedule you to come in at like day 2 or 3. We're going to do another blood work and ultrasound. And then we are going to see if everything looks all right. We're going to do the water ultrasound and see where the fibroids are. But you have to get a period first. And I'm like, why do I have to have this period? Just shoot some water in me and see where the fibroids are. They're like, no, what if you're pregnant? I'm like, please stop saying that I'm not pregnant. Like, I get it that you have to be so sure, and if I don't have a period, and like, but it's killing me, right? Like this, how many more times is how I feel. I don't have any more energy for this. So I was like, all right, fine. So now I'm waiting for my period, which should be here today, according to the schedule of things. I have every, pain and cramps and my boob feeling like, oh Lord, like everything. I want to eat chocolate nonstop. So I'm like, okay, where is it? Where is it? But based on the fact that I had 2 in the last year, I don't think it's going to show up. I don't know. So if it doesn't, guess what? Got a call. Then they're probably going to put me on birth control pills. for a month, force a period. Guess what we have to do then? Blood work, ultrasound, wait, period, blah, test, water ultrasound. It's like never ending. And that's been the hardest part of this whole like egg donor world, because you know that is like the part that I have the hardest time with is like wrapping my head around the whole emotional aspect of that and the reality of it, how the kid is going to be in the future, and all these millions of questions. But I'm doing that while trying to deal with like, can I even have a baby? I have thyroid issues, I have endometriosis, I have a nerve block, I have obviously more fibroids and scar tissue and pain and what? So yeah, I can't even get the green light to do the egg donor, and I'm not even sure if I got the green light that I would even do it. So should I keep continuing to do all this? I'm not sure, but I'm just trying to get to a point where, you know, I can get a green light, because then I feel like I can make a decision. It's like, why even make a decision if I don't ever get that green light? Then we need to move on to surrogacy, and then why did I do all this stuff to even begin with? Like, what is the point? So yeah, that's where things are, and that's my story. And I'm sure you can see how exhausted and how deflated and how emotional I am. And I'm sure if you guys are experiencing any of this or more of it, more than I am, or anything that it is, or you're right in the middle of it, or anything, that you are feeling all the things I'm feeling. So that's my story. Obviously we can, you know, jump back to some of those parts of the story eventually, and you know, as you know, I do more videos, I'll probably be referencing a lot of stuff I talked about in this video. So I think that's everything. And I will, my next video will just be a little bit more into maybe the egg donor world, a little bit more into the adoption world, a little bit more into what happens in a few days next week, my appointments, what they say. I mean, I have a million things I could talk about. I don't really know how to organize it yet, but I think I'm just gonna I wanted to do these 2 videos, get everything set up, and kind of take it from there. So if you have questions, comments, or you want to share your story with me, you know I would love to hear it, and I want to support each other. And I'm here for you. So talk to you guys soon. Bye.